The NFL season is just a few weeks away, and fantasy football is right around the corner. Here at IDP Plus, we are dedicated to making you the most informed fantasy football manager and better that we can. Here on this version of the IDP Plus podcast, I have been going around the league and focusing on as many NFL teams as I can through a fantasy focused lens. This week, this episode, we're talking Detroit Lions. So sit tight. We're going to get into everything fantasy related, offense, defense, coaching, line, everything about the Detroit Lions in just a sec. Welcome back to another week of the IDP Plus podcast. On this edition of the channel, I'm your host, Axton Harding, and I've been going through as many teams as I can until we get up to the NFL season, just kind of talking offense, defense, scheme changes, deployment changes, personnel changes, everything I can extract, studs, duds, sleepers, overvalues, undervalues, as many things as I can possibly extract from as many teams as I can get through from now until the beginning of the season. I've already gotten through a couple of divisions. I need to kind of ramp it up if I want to get through all 32, but in this one, we're talking the Detroit Lions. And typically I would share my screen and you guys can kind of follow along with me and just kind of see what I use, but I'll kind of more have to verbally express that this time. I've been having some kind of sharing screen issues. I'm kind of working out some internet things, so bear with me here today. You're just gonna kind of have to look at my ugly mug. So let's talk about coaching changes so far for the Detroit Lions, then we'll get into offensive line and some player stuff. So coaching changes, we're looking at same head coach. Dan Campbell comes back in for another season with the Detroit Lions. Then we have some coordinator changes on defense. We've got Kelvin Shepard, who was promoted from the linebacker coach a season ago. Now he's going to be looking at this defense from a more holistic approach as opposed to a more kind of granular approach specific to the linebacker position. Nonetheless, the linebacker deployment ought to be the same. And so he kind of, he was coaching these guys up. So now if we want to talk about maybe differences in deployment, that's kind of going to be something we're just going to have to feel out. You got to figure that a guy who's not had any experience as a coordinator is more or less just going to kind of go off of what he knows. And he's been in this Detroit Lions defensive system for a couple of years now. Got to figure he's going to kind of carry on the same kind of deployment, at least for the most part. That's kind of the only thing that we can assume at this point. So we'll talk a little bit more about deployment on the and kind of what rotations might look like, full-time players. So just to kind of go from the front to the back of the defense, because this is kind of going to be our IDP bread and butter. We want to know who's going to be on the field the most. So the defensive line is kind of ugly. They really don't have much talent outside of Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to be your only full-time player. They're not going to really play anybody over 50-60% of snaps whatsoever on the defensive line outside of him, even outside linebackers. So they just have a heavy rotation there on the defensive line. But they will throw Aiden Hutchinson out there, and he's an outstanding player. So we'll get more into him here in a little bit. They'll play two full-time linebackers at as 100% of snaps. Both these guys won't come off the field. Anzalone, Jack Campbell are going to be the two guys there in the middle. And then they have two full-time corners and safeties as well. This team does like to have full-time players in the back end, but in the defensive front, they like to keep people fresh. So just kind of deployment expectations of kind of what we can assume based on what we have so far. So we'll just kind of have to see how week one shakes out, see if anything changes, but they don't really have the talent enough that anybody's going to really jump up and garner any kind of significant snaps on the defensive line. So it's looking pretty ho-hum. So now if we want to talk offensive coordinator changes, John Morton was the former Denver Broncos passing game coordinator. He now comes in as offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions offense. I think we're kind of looking at some of the same. Everybody's pretty well entrenched in their roles on the offense. I would imagine that they're going to keep deploying people very similarly moving forward. There'll just probably be a few little kind of schematic changes and play style changes, but we'll just kind of have to see how that looks. We can only project so much. We got to figure that everybody's going to kind of maintain their kind of role here. So it's just a matter of who this new coordinator is going to kind of help run through the offense through outside of Amon-Ra and the running back. So we'll just kind of we'll get into more of that here in a second. So now let's talk about offensive line changes, because this team did lose some significant players, but it actually added some significant players as well. They lose Frank Ragnow, their all-pro center, and then they lose Kevin Zeitler, their all-pro guard, both graded at 85 or better on the offensive line per PFF. They add Christian Mahogany, a 2024 sixth-round pick, who's actually had some pretty impressive performances. He grades out at an 86-plus overall offensive lineman. Even as a sixth-round pick, that's pretty outstanding for a guy who's taken advantage of the opportunity when he's had it. Then they also drafted Tate Ratledge in the second round of this year's draft. He's also a pretty impressive offensive lineman. He only allowed 2 sacks in his entire collegiate career. So this, they lost a couple of important pieces. Now they kind of lose that chemistry with these new guys, but they're talented pieces, and I figure that chemistry should kind of mold together fairly early on. We'll just kind of see how exactly that's going to play out. But overall, the unit likely takes a slight step down just because of that lack of chemistry. Offensive lines are better the longer they're together. Even a bad offensive line over time can get better just due to that chemistry, but often there's so much changeover. When people underperform, they get guys in there that will. So these guys are talented enough, they ought to swoop right in and kind of fit right in pretty well with this offensive line. But again, this offensive line was pretty middling overall last year. I think we can kind of expect a little bit of a step down, but I don't think it's going to be a huge significant reduction in overall play. So it was a middling pass blocking offensive line in 2024, but they were top 10 in run blocking based on offensive efficiency, where they were kind of middling in attempts, and they were top 10 in offensive yards per game, passing yards and rushing yards. So they were middling in terms of attempts in both of those areas, but they were also top 10 in actual production. So that's where you see they had a pretty efficient offense just thanks to the offensive line. But generally speaking, in terms of maybe like a per rush or a per pass basis, they were kind of middling overall compared to the league. So I think we can kind of expect more of the same this year. I don't think it's going to be a significant drop or increase. I think it's going to be pretty middling line overall. So that's going to be kind of my best guess as to kind of how this thing would play out. Of course, we can't really guarantee anything until we see it with our eyes. So we're just going to have to see how the first couple of weeks shake out, see how this offense is getting deployed under the new coaching system. So I've gone too far in with my intro. Let's get into some player talk. I use ourlads. Ourlads.com is a great website for depth charts and things like that. So I'm kind of going through here, and we'll just kind of quickly go down. Jared Goff mans the quarterback position with Hendon Hooker behind him. Jared Goff is going to be a nice quarterback 2 for you. Nobody that's going to finish in top 5 of overall quarterbacks unless things just go perfectly in his way. But definitely a more than serviceable guy that you can get pretty late in your drafts, probably more as a bottom end quarterback 2. And I wouldn't really expect him to finish higher than maybe a middling quarterback 2. He can get up there in top 10. He's put it up there, but I just think there's so many other guys in this kind of quarterback 8 to like 18, even 20 range that could easily finish and have higher upside than a guy like Jared Goff. Your Trevor Lawrence's, your J.J. McCarthy's, even though he hasn't really played a snap, he's presented already, especially with college tape and the kind of weapons that he has, that he's going to have a pretty high upside. So, there's a number of guys. Dak Prescott's in that range too, and he's had top 5 seasons on more than one occasion. Jared Goff is just going to be a pretty high floor kind of player, but not a guy that's going to be too crazy for upside. So I'm not particularly excited about going out trading for a guy like this. If you get late in your drafts and he's kind of falling down the boards, and you can get him as like a backup quarterback, or maybe I don't feel all that great as a quarterback too, but he'll be fine. He's just not going to be anybody with high upside. So should be pretty ho-hum season for Jared Goff. I think we can expect more of the same from what we've seen from him the last couple of seasons. 4,500 yards pretty consistently, 30 touchdowns pretty consistently. This offense is going to run pretty well through Jared Goff, and especially the running game is going to open up things no matter who the quarterback is. In all honesty, they have a good enough offensive line with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs really opening up the field. Jared Goff should be just fine. Again, it's just limited upside. So now let's talk about running backs. We've got David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And let's see, those are really the only guys that we're really even going to care about. I'm not going to go into depth guys, stash 'ems. There's too many guys already here. Jahmyr Gibbs is the first round talent. He's going to be one of the first couple of running backs off the board. David Montgomery might be kind of more where we can extract a little bit of value, but it's not even that great of value because he's actually finally being drafted a little bit more, I guess, around where he should be. He's kind of going on sleeper as like a late RB2, back end RB2, and he's got that high end RB2, back end RB1 upside. We've seen a guy like David Montgomery. We've seen a guy like David Montgomery finish pretty consistently among middling RB2s. Never really he had an RB4 season there early on in Chicago in 2020, but that was pretty much an outlier season. We haven't seen him really come close to that. He kind of hovers around RB19, and that's kind of where he's getting drafted, is RB20-ish. So there's not maybe a couple of picks value there. I think that the value with David Montgomery is going to be more in the trade market. I saw him go for DJ Moore straight up. You probably maybe sneak in an early second, or kind of do like a 2-for-1 kind of thing if you got some kind of cloggers down at the end that maybe the David Montgomery manager might like. I think trading is going to be probably where you get the best value for a guy like David Montgomery. But again, I think he's pretty evenly valued. In years past, he was a guy who constantly fell down the board, and zero RB drafters loved him. They might have to reach a little bit higher than where they're usually comfortable taking their RB1 this year if they're going to get a guy like David Montgomery. But I think he should be fine. This offense is going to run consistently through these guys. They are the offense. Without them, this passing game would not operate near as effectively. So Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery should be in for pretty big seasons. If you wanted to extract anything from like Jahmyr Gibbs other than it should be pretty par for the course, you might consider, if you've drafted him, that the guy's value is probably as high as it's going to be. As RB2, your value doesn't get it. You can't really go up from there. The only way you can go is down. So I have already myself traded Jahmyr Gibbs to kind of expand on that value and add more depth to my starting roster. And I got 2 first-round picks into Kenneth Walker. And of course, there were a couple of other pieces. It was a decent-sized trade. But I found that to be pretty helpful for my team. I used a single first round pick, the 103 for him. I got a couple of middle first round picks, and a Kenneth Walker. I felt like I was able to get a majority of that value and add points to my starting roster because I was able to sell him for a lot more than what I paid for him. So selling guys in your dynasty leagues at their peak value is going to be the best way that you can get a return on your investment in these players if you want to consider them assets for your team. So there's something to consider. By no means am I saying that, yes, get out from under Jahmyr Gibbs. He's going to go down. He's going to finish him on the top end running backs for the foreseeable future. I just felt like for my team's makeup that I needed to add more to my flex positions, give my team a little bit more depth for this particular team. So that was my decision to go ahead and get off of Jahmyr Gibbs and try to add more value to make a more effective playoff run instead of having all of that value consolidated in a couple of players. Because if I can add more points to my starting roster, that's going to help me get push farther into a playoff run and add more depth as well. So just something to consider there. Again, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a fine player. I don't foresee anything kind of going wrong with his season. He should be just fine. He has he almost had 2,000 yards overall last year. I think we can expect a lot more of the same. He's a freaking lightning back, and this team loves him, and he's very effective. So keep an eye on the betting show, too. I'm sure we'll hit up on some Jahmyr Gibbs throughout the season for touchdown props. But there's the running backs for you. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, kind of going where they should. Jahmyr Gibbs, max value. If you wanted to get out now and expand that value, value's not going to go up much more than this. So David Montgomery ought to be a good RB2 for your teams. A flex play, if you can get him there, that would be ideal. So it's kind of my thoughts there on the running back room. Now, if we want to talk about wide receivers, let's move into the receiver room. We've got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Tim Patrick, other starters. They drafted Isaac Tesla. I don't really foresee him or Caleb Freeman getting a whole lot of work unless one of these studs goes down. Isaac Tesla might have some boom games, but I would imagine that's more of like a DFS play or just kind of more of a stash in your dynasty leagues, I'm not looking to draft him in season long. He's not going to have a consistent role in the offense while everybody's healthy. So Tim Patrick being maybe another DFS play, not a guy I'm really excited about, so I'm not going to go into too much detail on him. Jameson Williams, though, he's a guy that I actually really like for this season. He's kind of getting a lot of buzz in the fantasy community, and I can see why. He's going off the board as a wide receiver 29 or 30. He's going off the board as a wide receiver 3, and he finished as a wide receiver 2 last year. So let's just talk about some of Jameson Williams' stats. A year ago, he finished as, wide receiver 22. 7 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards his first year with 1,000 yards. And honestly, guys, I think this guy, he put up the kind of consistency. At first, to start the season or to start his career, he was very much a boom bust kind of guy. But last year we saw him kind of develop somewhat of a floor where we didn't see his numbers. Like, he's pretty consistently put up 10, 15 plus points. Let's see, 2 games where there was an injury, 3 games, 4 games last year where he had less than 10 points. Otherwise, we're looking at 24, 15, 16, 17, 13, 12, 26, 24. He's got incredible upside. And then the last game, 10 points in week 18 on 6 targets or 6 receptions, 34 yards. And the guy put up 11 points. That is not bad. If that's going to be kind of the low end for a guy like Jameson Williams going as a wide receiver 3 and kind of the wide receiver 30 range, probably getting him in like the 7th round, 6th, 7th round, that's incredible. I think Jameson Williams is going to have enough upside if he even just has the same season as last year that you're going to get a whole couple of rounds value or return just in production in your lineup from a guy like this. And on a week-to-week upside, we've seen him go for 143 yards and a touchdown. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go out and get a couple of touchdowns, but he can make a couple of big plays for Jameson Williams, a couple of 60-yard bombs downfield, and he's got 120 yards and probably a touchdown. He's a big playmaker, and I really like Jameson Williams to kind of jump up the boards this season. I think he's definitely going to finish higher than where he's going in drafts. That is ADP. So Jameson Williams is a guy I really like for to kind of boost in value this season. I'm not sure what the trade market looks like. I haven't exactly gone out and traded for him yet. He's a guy I'll be looking into probably coming up into the season to maybe try to get a share or 2 of him because I think the value is just great. But we'll have to see if the value is more garnered towards trading or if it's in drafts. So I don't think he's going to be too expensive, but your managers who are owning him are probably pretty excited after last season and probably going to want you to pay up a pretty penny. But you might be able to obtain him for like a first-round pick or something like that. I'd probably start with a second or something like that and just kind of work from there. See kind of where they feel that he might be valued, or if for whatever reason they're trying to get out from under him, that might be a good opportunity. But I got a feeling that your best value is going to be in your drafts is to pick him up for your team that way. But Jameson Williams, guy I like on the rise for this season. Now let's talk a little Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think it's going to be a pretty ho-hum season for him as well. Second round pick a few years ago has just been more than consistent. Never finished lower than wide receiver 21. That was his rookie season. Now it's been wide receiver 7, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 3. 10, 12 touchdowns the last couple of seasons. 1,100 plus yards in the last 3. 140 plus targets, 106 plus receptions. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a pretty good dynasty and redraft asset this season. You're going to have to, again, his value, there's not really going to be a whole lot of value here. He has drafting, maybe. He's kind of going more in like the super flex leagues. He's going in the back of the first, kind of early second. So there might be some value there if you want to get a couple of stud wide receivers there at the back end of the first. That's kind of something I've been looking to do. He will be more than consistent if we want to look at game by game basis. 8.7 was his lowest game last year. 5.8 in week 1, and then 8.7. Other than that, he never had a game lower than 12.2, 10.3, and that was only a couple of times. The guy is so consistent. Touchdowns out the wazoo. He had like 8 straight games with touchdowns last year. I don't know that we can expect that kind of that amount of touchdowns, 12 from last year. But he's put up double digits so far in two seasons in a row. So I think he's going to get plenty of usage. The upside is pretty great with Amon-Ra, but he's not going to go up too much in value. So drafting is probably going to be where you're going to get the most value out of Amon-Ra St. Brown. So if you want a guy like this, that's going to be kind of the best way to go out and get him. If you're going to pay up for him in your dynasty leagues, it's going to cost quite a pretty penny. So, just take that with a grain of salt. Not saying you shouldn't trade for him if you have the capital and you can move it and afford that for your team. Absolutely, definitely going to be a stalwart for your team. So, love some Amon-Ra St. Brown ever since he's gotten into the league. So let's talk about tight ends. We're looking at Sam Laporta, Brock Wright. Brock Wright is more of a DFS play, kind of a boom bust guy, and depending on matchups, you get a defense that kind of has some linebackers that struggle to guard and coverage. Brock Wright could have a boom game in DFS, but other than that, not really too excited about him. Sam Laporta is kind of going in this weird area of drafts where he's kind of overvalued, in my opinion. Beyond Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, and George Kittle, after the first 4 rounds, I think there's a huge teardrop. And in all honesty, he's going in like the 5th, 6th round, where I could be getting other guys who are going to put up more consistent fantasy production, and they're the top target for their team, if not the second or top running back for their team at that point. Sam Laporta is just going to be a little bit too rich for my blood. But yeah, I mean, but he's gonna get a decent share of the work. 7 to 10 touchdowns so far in his first couple of seasons. He's just not somebody that I really like the price tag for. I just assume wait for a guy like David Njoku, Evan Ingram. There's guys like that who are going to get plenty of targets and plenty of work, and they're not going to cost you near as much in your drafts. But again, and Sam Laporta can just kind of, he's got immense upside where he can get up 21 points, but he kind of falls off too, where when he's third target on the team, it's pretty easy to fall off. And if you're going to the finish round, that's the third target on your team. Again, I mentioned there's too many other guys on the board at that point in your drafts that are going to get far more work in and put up more consistent numbers in the box score that's going to lead to our fantasy points. So I'm not really excited about trading for Sam Laporta. If you need it, that's fine, but you're going to have to pay quite a bit. And frankly, there's other tight ends you can go get for a lot cheaper that are going to put up very similar numbers. Because last season he was tight end 8, and after tight end 3, everybody's pretty much the same. So why pay up when you can go get somebody else that's a lot cheaper who is almost guaranteed more work than Sam Laporta. So not too excited about Sam Laporta. There's not too much value to extract from him. He's not a great value in my opinion. He's going way too early in drafts, and you're going to have to pay too much to acquire him. Probably more of like a sell high if you have him on your team. You can kind of expand that value if you can get a first round pick or second and David Njoku or something for a guy like Sam Laporta. I don't mind that trade at all. That would be kind of a good way to shift that value, get a majority, if not more, production out of your tight end position, and then add some capital to then go get another upside player later on. Might be something to consider. So Sam Laporta, I don't think he's going to go. I guess he's finished as the tight end 1. I think there were a lot of caveats around that. So I think where he's going now at tight end 8 is pretty fair. But again, there's a lot of guys that are pretty similar around that. So Sam Laporta is pretty pricey right now. He might be a guy that I'd be looking to sell, trade back, get a lower end tight end who's going to get the same kind of production. All right, now before we get into the defensive side of the ball, I just want to tell you guys to go out and go on Amazon.com and get your consistency guide. Bob Lung's 10th annual consistency guide is available now for $15. Just go search Fantasy Football Consistency Guide and get yours on Amazon today. $15, go out and get it. It just gives a different approach to fantasy football and through the lens of consistency. You don't often see that in the fantasy community too much, so just kind of get a different perspective. $15 to help you with your drafts. So go check that out. Now let's look at the defensive side of the ball. I mentioned earlier off the top that the defensive line is pretty ugly outside of Aiden Hutchinson. where on like the defensive interior, nobody plays over 50% of snaps. Liam McNeil did last year. Nobody on this defensive line is putting up any kind of numbers you're going to want in your lineup in fantasy football for IDP, at least in the defensive interior. Then again, Aiden Hutchinson is really the only end that I'm excited about. I loved James Houston a couple of years ago, but he's not on the team this year. There's been other guys as well that I've kind of liked, but they've more been flash in the pans when they get an opportunity. Outside of Aiden Hutchinson, with his 80-90+% of snaps, when Aiden Hutchinson went down last year, and they still never played anybody over 60%. Levi Onwuzurike played the most snaps at 60%, and frankly, nobody's touching him in fantasy leagues. So they didn't have a single offensive lineman or defensive lineman that you would have wanted to roster last year after Aiden Hutchinson went down. So beyond Aiden Hutchinson, we're not really too interested unless we see that the defensive coordinator is going to deploy people a little bit differently. In that case, you might consider someone like Marcus Davenport just to keep an eye on him. I wouldn't be picking him up or trading for him by any stretch of the imagination. He's just got the draft capital, and maybe if he gets a consistent role, he might do something with it. But we've kind of been saying that about him for a while now. So outside of Aiden Hutchinson, with his return to the field this year, I'm not too excited about anybody. So let's talk Aiden Hutchinson. He was on pace before he went down last year for an incredibly historic pressure total. He was getting about 9 or 10 pressures a game through like 5 games to start the year last year. That was insane. He was on pace for like 20 sacks. It was nuts. So I think he's going to have a slow start to start the season, but I think he does end the season really strong and get back to those kind of numbers. And honestly, I know he's a little bit of a value so far. He's fallen in drafts kind of to the back end of that top tier edge rusher group where we've seen guys like your Nick Bosa's, Myles Garrett, TJ Watts. He was often in dynasty among the top of that group last year due to the injury. He's kind of fallen back to the end of that group, kind of like a defensive lineman, like 5, not a DL5, but overall DL5, I should clarify. But definitely, in my opinion, in terms of dynasty, he should be the most valuable player in IDP leagues. He just has the greatest upside, and Aiden Hutchinson is just a tried and true stud. And if there's any kind of value that you can get from trading or in your drafts where you can take advantage of him in dynasty leagues falling down the board, I love that play. I actually traded for him in an all IDP league where we start 3 defensive linemen, and I traded Dre Greenlaw, George Karlaftis, and I think a second round IDP pick. In my opinion, picks in IDP outside of the first round are pretty well useless. You're taking a shot in the dark. I just assume go pick guys up off waivers, especially in the start 3. So I don't mind trading that second round pick. It's not nearly as valuable as if they were offense. So I feel like I got a good value on Aiden Hutchinson, and the owner was even pretty excited about his season this year. So if there's a way you can go out and trade him, I wouldn't even mind paying a first round pick if you can afford the capital. Don't go out and trade a first round pick if you need some depth on the offensive side of the ball, but definitely he's going to be worth the price tag. So if there's a dip in value, you can take advantage. But now let's move on to inside linebacker. I told you guys they play 2 full-time inside linebackers, and that's going to be Alex Anzalone and Jack Campbell. As long as they're on the field, they're going to play 100% of snaps, and they're both going to be pretty respectable starters, probably more like an LB3 type for Jack Campbell, and Alex Anzalone is probably LB4 or 5 type with a little bit more upside. Can he stay on the field? But they're both going to get you about 115, 120 plus tackles a season, so long as they play a full one. And they're pretty ho-hum unit. Nothing too crazy about any of their upside. Jack Campbell's best tackling game last season, I think, was 10 tackles. He didn't really flash with like a 15 tackle, 2 sack game or anything wild. But he's pretty consistent between about 7 to 10 tackles a game. You can't ask for much better than that out of your linebacker 3. So I'm not saying he's an incredible value. Go out and scoop him up, and he's just going to reap linebacker 1 benefits for you. He's pretty well going to put up linebacker 2 numbers. You're going to get him as a high-end linebacker 3. I don't mind that at all. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be one of the best playmakers, and he's going to get plenty of work because, again, I mentioned earlier, the defensive line is pretty porous outside of Aiden Hutchinson, so there should be plenty of tackling opportunities for a guy like Jack Campbell, and Detroit didn't really add too much to the defensive line as well to help out Aiden Hutchinson. I could have talked more about some of the changes there, and I guess I can here. No, we're not gonna waste the time naming names that we don't care to have on our team. So Jack Campbell and Alex Anzalone, I mentioned, are going to be pretty steady at 120 plus tackles. That's really respectable for an LB3 or flex LB. So I like them for this season. Not a whole lot of value to extract. It's not like you're going to get them as an LB5 and they got LB3 upside. Alex Anzalone maybe he's going like an LB5 with some upside, but he's pretty injury prone and he's frankly nothing too special for the upside that he has. He's kind of got a low end too. So nothing too overly flashy about these guys, but they should have pretty ho-hum, pretty consistent season. They're not going to just be, brittle floor kind of players. So love these linebackers moving forward. Now, if we want to get into the defensive back room, let's talk about those guys. Derek Barnes is kind of a guy, if he gets opportunity, he can be a pretty good player for the weak side linebacker, or strong side linebacker, I guess. Alex Anzalone plays weak side, but Derek Barnes just can't get a consistent kind of production put up on stat sheets. So, and he's not really got the kind of role within this defense that we would like to see. But he's going to be on the field. Maybe the defensive coordinator uses him in a different way. Actually, there was one time where he was a pretty nice waiver wire darling, but we'll see if he can get back to that with defensive coordinator changes. Just maybe someone to keep an eye on. Nothing crazy. He hasn't been overly performing in practice or camp or anything like that. But he once was on the scene and start worthy at some point. So I've kind of always had a soft spot in my heart. I just can't get myself to pick him up at this point. But maybe something changes this year. All right, that's enough. Let's get into defensive backs. At the cornerback position, I mentioned off the top, 2 full-time safeties, 2 full-time corners. We're looking at Terrion Arnold and DJ Reed in the quarterback position. DJ Reed comes from New York Jets. Terrion Arnold was a first-round pick in the 2024 draft. Then at strong safety, we've got Brian Branch. Free safety is Kirby Joseph. And nickelback is Amik Robertson. Brian Branch is going to be the guy that's going to be the priciest on the defense outside of Aiden Hutchinson. He's going to be a guy you got to probably get in the 3rd or 4th round of an all IDP draft. You're going to have to get him pretty early because he's pretty sought after in IDP leagues. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of stats you can bring to the table. 100 tackles already, 109 tackles last year in his 2nd year in the NFL. He does rush the passer. He plays around the line of scrimmage. He's a strong safety that plays in the box plenty. And that's what we love to see because if our defensive backs are playing around the line of scrimmage, that means they're near the ball and they have more chances for tackles. There's more opportunity there because they're around the play. If there's a rushing play, they're around the ball. If there's a short passing play, they're probably guarding a wide receiver until they see it's a run. Brian Branch is going to be around the line of scrimmage, and when you play around the line of scrimmage, the coach can use you in different ways. He can blitz you. He can use you in all kinds of different ways. But we like our defensive backs playing around the line of scrimmage, and Brian Branch already presenting a nice floor of 100 tackles in the season. He can rush the passer. He's got a floor of interceptions already too. He had 3 in his rookie season, 4 last year. So he gets his hands on plenty of batted balls. Get you some extra points there. So rightfully so, Brian Branch is probably the top defensive back in IDP leagues, outside of maybe Travis Hunter. But Travis Hunter hasn't played any snaps. Brian Branch has put up some pretty stellar numbers already so far in the NFL. So if you want to trade for Brian Branch, the DB position is too volatile to really go out and trade for guys unless you're just absolutely desperate or their points are just juiced. In that case, you're probably going to have to pay up for Brian Branch, and outside of just having a whole bunch of capital to do it, I'm not really going to advocate for going on trade for him. And in drafts, you're going to have to pay up quite a bit. You're going to have to sacrifice maybe a linebacker 2 or something like that to get a guy like Brian Branch. And frankly, again, the DB position is so volatile. There's guys that pop onto the scene every year. Even though you get through your draft and you've filled out your defensive backs, there's probably going to be a better one that comes up on waivers at some point during the season. So if you miss out on a guy like Brian Branch, don't don't freak out. You probably find one on waivers. Go check out Orange Man or Johnny the Greek. Orange Man is his tag. There's a few numbers behind it, but go look up Johnny the Greek. He has his cornerback corner, and he can help you string defensive backs if you miss out on some top end guys and you're not sure what to do. Johnny the Greek's your guy. He has a 70% hit rate. He knows what he's doing. So he can help you kind of pinpoint those matchups at defense back. And sometimes that's what you have to do if you miss out on guys like this. But Brian Branch should be a stud for pretty much the entirety of his career, barring any injury. I think we can pretty well chalk up 100 tackles and a handful of interceptions and pass deflections every year. He should have a pretty consistent role in this defense. So let's talk cornerbacks. I'm not really advocating unless you have to start cornerbacks. Kirby Joseph is pretty okay. Just kind of look at game-to-game consistency. 3 tackle floor seems to be kind of a sweet spot for him, but he's nothing that's just crazy. He'll get his hands on some battered balls, but and he's okay. If you need to start a cornerback, there's better options than Kirby Joseph, but if you're desperate and he's out there, he should do fine for you. Again, hit up Johnny the Greek if you need to stream cornerbacks. That's how I advocate for it. There's just too many out there. Too many defensive backs out there, and you're not going to start enough to leave the waiver wire dry, honestly. If you start 4 or 5 defensive backs, they're still going to be plenty because there's 32 teams, and a lot of them have, most of them have 4. So that puts 120 starters already on the board. So there should be plenty of guys that pop on every year. So don't feel like you got to go out and get defensive backs early. I strongly advocate for waiting for them in your drafts. There is value in the waiver wire at that position. DJ Reed has been a guy that has been a pretty good producer on the New York Jets. Just maybe mainly because he was opposite Sauce Gardner, so teams didn't want to throw to Sauce. They threw to DJ Reed. But again, we're not going to get too much into cornerbacks. They're going to be pretty inconsistent outside of just guys who are going to get peppered with targets across from a shutdown corner. Meek Robertson is maybe a guy that I'd be kind of interested this year playing the nickelback position. Much like a Brian Branch, the nickelback is going to be playing around the line of scrimmage. Meek Robertson, I don't know exactly what value this is going to end up being on the box score. But just the fact that he's lined up in the nickel is encouraging. If he's going to get plenty of snaps around the line of scrimmage, he might be a guy to keep an eye on. Because if he's going to play nickel and he's going to get plenty of run and he's going to play around the line of scrimmage, that's a lot of opportunity. And we could be looking at a pretty consistent floor already if he's going to play majority of his snaps around the line of scrimmage and be a true nickelback and be utilized as such. I think Robertson could actually have a nice little floor here. So we'll just have to kind of keep an eye on him. He's not a guy who's really popped onto the scene at this point, but he does find himself in a decent role as it appears here on the depth chart. So maybe just kind of keep an eye on the waiver wire for him. Just kind of see how week 1 goes and what that usage looks like under the new coaching staff. So just kind of a quick little hitter on the defensive backs there. So guys, that's going to do it for my Detroit Lions fantasy focus. If you made it this far, I just want to thank you very much. I appreciate the support, and hopefully you guys find some value in these videos. If you like what you see, throw down a comment and let me know if there's something that I'm not doing that you would like for me to talk about. Let me know that as well. If you have questions about your rosters or about any Detroit Lions or players as I go through these, throw comments down, interact. I'll be in there. I keep an eye on these things all the time. So also feel free to message me on Twitter at Axton IDP. I'm always willing to answer questions there as well, or just talk football, maybe decisions you're trying to make. So again, thank you everybody. Go check out the website at idpplus.com and please consider a subscription to get our access to our subscriber only content over there. We've got tons of tools and stats and things coming, even a little bit of betting. So just kind of keep an eye on the website as well. And hopefully you'll consider a subscription. If you like what you see, do that, get into the Discord and rock with us this season. So we are gearing up and ready to produce for you guys. So thank you again, everybody. And we'll see you next time on as I kind of make my way through the NFL to another fantasy focus video in the future. So appreciate you guys and we'll see you later.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.